this is like getting up in the world. I mean, I feel like the clouds will be running around here. Paul, actually, after I picked this from the lectionary, this text, and then after I read it, I thought I don't need to write anything. I don't need to give a sermon about it because it's almost self-explanatory. But I know that people feel cheated if they don't have somebody expounding something or other to them. So I have prepared a sermon to explain what almost doesn't need an explanation. So if, some of you feel the loss of an hour's sleep, feel free. Anyway, so Paul starts out this passage by telling us all his good qualities. He's the greatest. The lectionary writers must have left out verses 1 through 3 for a reason. In trying to figure out why, I decided that they wanted the focus to be on what Paul thought he was, so they don't tell us what he's confident about. And for our purposes, it does not matter. We don't care what he was confident about. So this is what Paul thinks about himself. He's been circumcised, which was mandatory for a good Jewish male. And it had been done when he was 8 days old, as was mandated by the Torah. So he was doing all the right and proper things. He was from a good Jewish tribe, the tribe of Benjamin. And as if that wasn't enough, Paul reminds them that he is a Hebrew of Hebrews. We might say a full-blooded Hebrew, through and through. Now, then he goes into his lineage. He's legally a Pharisee. He has persecuted the church. By that by church, he means that upstart church started by some fellow named Jesus. And to top that off, he says his righteousness is faultless. He does not think too well of himself, does he? A Bible footnote describes righteousness as being produced by using the law as an attempt to merit God's approval and blessing. So Paul doesn't deny God. He just doesn't attribute any of these qualities to God. And if each one of us had to describe ourselves to someone, could we do any better than Paul did? I think he did a very good job of telling people how good he was. Isn't that what we want people to think of us, how good we are? Well, you better read Paul to learn how to do it. Anyway, he was missing something. Now, if we go to the next paragraph, see there's 3 paragraphs in this text, we see a definite change in Paul's attitude. For Paul's tone, or from his tone, we know he has never met Jesus. And, in the first paragraph, he hasn't met him. In the second paragraph, he's met him. And it's changed his whole being. In the first paragraph, Paul is definitely a humanist in that he gives no one but himself credit for how wonderful he is. But then after running into Jesus, he is quick to realize that righteousness is from God and is based on faith and in direct opposition to his previous idea that righteousness comes from the law, meaning the law of the Jews. Now, Paul's self-confidence and braggadocio have been taken away from himself, and he has given the credit all to God. In verse 7, Paul says, "Whatever was to my profit, I now consider loss for the sake of Christ." Now, you think Paul might have been thinking about his time as a tax collector when it really wasn't considered unusual for a tax collector to not turn in every bit of the money that he had collected. So I assumed that he would change his way of doing business with the realization that his new way of thinking would not tolerate dishonesty. We have to assume, it doesn't tell us, but we have to assume that would be his way of thinking. Now, in the last paragraph of today's text, Paul realizes that just because he has a new way of looking at things, it does not mean that it is a done deal. He knows that just because he has made a turnaround, it doesn't mean that he will not have to work at it to hang on to his newfound virtue, so to speak. He says in verse 12, "Not that I have already obtained all this, or have already been made perfect, but I press to take hold of that for which Christ Jesus took hold of me." He knew he had not yet reached the place where he felt called to be. In fact, Paul indicates that when he ends this text with "press on toward the goal to win the prize for which God has called me heavenward in Christ Jesus." So he knows what has gone on. Now, how can we say this text might apply to us 2,000 years after the fact? Times change. I guess you all have realized that times do change. I see these kids here, and they have no idea of what it's going to be like when they get old and are gray-haired like some of the rest of us. It ain't going to be like it is now. So, enjoy now. One of my favorite commentators, Carl Halliday, had this remark to make: "Life is a process, not an achievement." Paul's life process seems to have been made up to a series of steps. Step 1. Paul comes to the conclusion he's pretty well perfect on his own. I'm pretty good. And step 2, Paul meets Jesus the Christ. Step 3, Paul changes his former idea of his own wonderfulness to realize that the wonderfulness is only through the grace of God. And step 4, Paul also realizes he has not yet reached the perfect state that he will achieve when he finally meets Jesus the Christ in heaven. In Sunday school this morning, not Sunday school, the early discussion service or whatever we were in. Well, it was pretty neat. It was very instructive. But we were talking about perfection and had we reached perfection and, that sort of thing. And I thought, well, you're going to hear that again. But sometimes we have a tendency to think that we are where we are due to our own devices. And maybe in some cases that might be true. I have an idea that in my own case, It is not true. When thinking of some things that transpired in my life when I thought I was totally wonderful, I have realized that maybe I was wonderful because God made me that way. But certainly some of my actions and some words were not quite as wonderful as they could be. We probably all know that the best cure for not so wonderful actions are the results we encounter. You know, you do something, and for every action there's a reaction. And sometimes the reaction was not exactly what we would like to be, so we realized, no, maybe I better not do that. Do you suppose those results are allowed by God to provide us with cause for reflection? That thinking kind of takes us through step 3. Now, to my way of thinking, step 4 takes up the rest of our lives. You know, when you finally decide, I'm not going to achieve perfection instantly. I'm going to have to stick around for a long time, hopefully not forever, but for a long time to achieve what I'm going after. We are always consciously or unconsciously trying to improve our relationship with God. I liken that step to one of continuous hills and valleys, with steep hills and deep valleys being prevalent when we first come to the realization that we have to do something about our lives. But as life goes on, it is with the hope that sooner or later the terrain becomes more level. And I have to tell you, I really believe it does. Either that or you just forget, forget the hard stuff, forget the long climb up the hill, the long drop into the valley. I like to think maybe that's what it is. You just, your brain helps you out and you just forget stuff. That is my idea of what Paul's idea of life being a process means. But it's going to mean different things to different folks. Now, according to Paul, Jesus will take hold of our lives and change our attitude. Sometimes it takes a person a long time to realize what is happening. But as we begin the process of righting the wrongs of the past, we soon begin to realize that it won't happen overnight. And some of us have already figured that out. But even we have not yet achieved the goal that God set out for us. We know He wants the best for us, and in His own good time, He will take us as we are to sit with Him in heaven. We just need to keep on with the process of achievement. Amen.